here, since I have the opportunity, thank the countless meetings, conversations, organizations, groups that came together and worked together to bring this to now Board Bill 44. The work that you all have done has not gone in vain since, notably before COVID, when they first started meeting about this. First recognizing the need for this, and then again working together to find a pathway of this communication between our residents and city services, our residents and city departments, our residents and these very valuable notifications. Just an email, but it's an email of empowerment.
But can you tell me the thought behind having a neighborhood organization be able to have up to 5 city neighborhoods, and that there's no, and also the thought behind not requiring the people who want to have these things to live in the neighborhood itself? Okay, I'm sorry. Let me just back up, because there was a lot of misinformation, a lot of things that were mentioned in conversation that aren't in this legislation. The residency is addressed in the application. I want to thank our Citizen Service Bureau, our NSD department, our neighborhood stabilization officers that have been doing an amazing job here, especially during this response to the tornado.
I withdraw my question.
They have been at the table during this.
Alderwoman from the 12th, what is your point of order?
She is not answering my question, so either answer my question, I don't have anything to ask her. So either answer, what is the thought behind not having 5 city neighborhoods be represented? What is the point about not having residency in this legislation?
And to finish my thought, the residency, you can't apply to represent a neighborhood organization in a neighborhood that you don't live in. So that's where that is addressed. Second, again, our Citizen Service Bureau and our neighborhood stabilization officers and our departments have been at the table.
I have no further questions. I withdraw the floor from her. I have no further questions. So let me go here and read it. I have no further questions.
Alderwoman from the 10th, are you no longer yielding?
I would yield as long as I want to, because I want to correct the misinformation that's being
I'm not asking her. I have no further questions.
She wouldn't want to ask me questions because it would correct the stuff, so I understand.
All right. Alderwoman.
You know, people, it just says this, it just says that, and it doesn't change. Do you remember when we had an original COVID bill back in July and August of 2021, when we first got the ARPA money? We had an original bill that we passed when we had a different president. Do you remember that?
Right.
And then after the president and 2 others left our board of aldermen, we got this president here, and we also had the current sponsor of this bill.
Point of order.
Before us.
Alderwoman from the 10th, please state your point of order.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm trying to follow how the comments that are made now are germane to Board Bill 45 as amended.
We're getting ready to get to it right now. Getting ready to get to it.
Alderwoman from the 12th, please stay germane to the topic at hand, which is Board Bill 45.
It is about a reliability and saying how things are just the way they say.
Alderwoman, you may continue, but please keep your comments germane.
It is going to be germane, and we're getting to it. Didn't let me finish my question. Alderwoman from the 13th. So then this person, the 10th Ward, brought us a board bill that changed.
Point of order.
And so the way ARPA was done was changed. And then we came and we
Alderwoman from the 10th, please state your point of order.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'm just still trying to follow how this.
Alderwoman from the 12th Alderwoman from the 10th is recognized for her point of order.
And it was changed. And
Madam Clerk, could you please mute the Alderwoman from the 12th, because the Alderwoman from the 10th has the floor. Alderwoman from the 10th, will you please state your point of order?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Still trying to follow how the comments that are being made at this time are germane to 45 as amended, and would ask if they're not going in that direction, if we can continue to stay on the perfection of Board Bill 45 as amended.
Alderwoman from the 12th, this is your second warning. We are not discussing ARPA at this time. We are discussing Board Bill 45 as amended in committee.
Madam President, point of order. Point of order. You don't know where I was going because it didn't get any further. And I was to the point that when you asked me to trust you, which is what you said.
Alderwoman from the 12th, what is your point of order?
My point of order is that you can't be making a ruling on that I didn't get the question.
That's not a point of order. That's not a rule.
The question was, and so let me make it my proffer to you. The point is, if you're going to ask me to trust you, that it's going to be nothing is going to change, it's going to be fair. And the Alderwoman from the 13th just told you, you can try to act like, oh, we don't talk about race, but race is involved. And in this case right here, you're going to tell me, oh, I'm going to change something, but it's not going to affect. It is going to affect. I want to ask the Alderwoman, where in this legislation does it say that Shaw could not be contained in a neighborhood of 5 groups? Because
Point of order.
Alderwoman from the 12th, are you asking, who are you directing your question to?
I was only talking to one person, the 13th. I just did you a point of order because you're ruling on something you didn't ever let get out because you didn't want the point made that I can't trust people who tell me to trust me and then do something different. So I still made the point.
Alderwoman from the 12th, we're just all trying to stick on topic.
I'm talking about those registered neighborhoods, which is part of Board Bill 45. So I know the Alderwoman from the 10th wants to be able to read, so maybe she could go back to kindergarten and learn how to. 13.
Alderwoman from the 12th, I'm kindly going to ask you to please stay in decorum. Board Bill 44 was about the creation of those.
I will ask you, Madam President.
Alderwoman from the 12th, I have the floor at the moment. You may listen to what I have to say, or we will have to mute you. Madam Clerk, could you please mute Alderwoman from the 12th so that we may provide some clarification? So at this moment, I am asking Alderwoman from the 12th to please stay within decorum and not insult her fellow members of the Board of Aldermen. Board Bill 44, which we already voted on, is what created the registered neighborhood agreements. And now we are on Board Bill 45, which, Alderwoman from the 12th, I am explaining to you where we are in the agenda at the moment.
I think it might be appropriate in this instance to give a little bit of context so you know what prompted this. First, with respect to purpose, the purpose is one that is aimed at ending dispute about the duties held by the St. Louis City Sheriff's Office. The context comes from the really items, testimony, hearings before the Budget Committee earlier this year with respect to the sheriff's budget. And then in May of 2025, specifically on May 27, the sheriff sending a letter to the mayor indicating that on a date certain he would cease transportation of detainees requiring medical attention from the CJC. Following that letter, the sheriff reappeared before the Budget Committee that happened on June the 2nd, and the sheriff himself answered a number of questions, many of which had to do with the sheriff's, not just his budget and his expenditures, but also the core duties of the office. During that particular discussion, there was agreement. I think it is fair to say that there is no dispute that, with respect to at least 3 core duties of the sheriff's office, and that is the duty to secure the courts, the duty to serve legal papers, the duty to issue and maintain concealed carry permits. There is, however, of course, a disagreement or a dispute about a 4th core duty of the office, and that is the idea, again, of the office's responsibility to transport detainees requiring medical attention. From this history or research that was done along the way showed that as early as 1971, this board passed an ordinance recognizing that hospital administrators need issue permits to deputy sheriffs assigned to guard prisoners at city hospitals. Again, the idea being that more than 50 years ago, there was a recognition that one of the duties of the sheriff's office was to transport detainees requiring medical attention. Then in 1977, merely 6 years later, there was a case that was reported arising, of course, here in St. Louis, State Ex Rel, Missouri versus Jones, where the sheriff's duty to transport and supervise prisoners was judicially recognized. And again, we're talking more than 50 years ago. With respect to our budget committees, one of our discussions during budget was the idea that 25 years ago, one of Sheriff Montgomery's predecessors, James Murphy, recognized in writing that particular responsibility. And in fact, he used that responsibility during the budget committee to obtain additional funding. Now, your question might be, so what, or why is that important? Well, we know from a recent court filing, the Quo Warranto proceeding, that since January 1, there's at least 59 instances our sheriff's office refused to transport detainees requiring medical attention. I point blank asked him the question about whether he believed legislation would help him do his job. In other words, would legislation specifying duties assist him in the performance of the office? And his answer was a simple yes.
But where I wrestle with is adding requirements to a county office, which I still question if we have the authority to do. Now, I am somebody who also want the transport of our residents at the CJC to continue and not to be an issue. And if they need medical help, that they get the help that they need because they are still under the city's watch, if it's a CJC or the sheriff's office. However, I'm concerned with Section 1 of the bill. Section 1, the last line of the bill that says the roles and responsibility of the sheriff is to transport and protection of detainees into custody of the Department of Corrections and to receive hospital medical treatment, psychological treatment, that is us adding a responsibility outside of the 3 responsibilities that are in the state statute.
When I started this process, that's exactly where I started out. I am very well aware of the relationship between the state and the county or the city of St. Louis and what can be done on the local level in conjunction with or in connection with what happens at the state level. I will point out to you that beyond the custom, beyond the fact that this is a particular duty and responsibility undertaken by this office since at least the early 1970s, that again, we don't have to go far. We can refer directly to state statute. And what I would refer, and I believe, and I don't know, and I haven't spoken with the AG about this, but my guess when the AG has taken his position, he is basing his position on section 47.450 that says all general laws relating to all sheriffs shall apply to the city of St. Louis sheriff unless otherwise specified. So that's the general starting point. So then your question might be, well, is this particular language used? And then there, I think what we do is we look at section 221.040 that talk in terms of all sheriffs shall receive from other officers all persons apprehended by the officers or committed to jail by any competent authority. And it's that particular statute that talks about the responsibility or that lays the foundation for the responsibility of a sheriff, frankly, any sheriff in the state of Missouri, to transport detainees. And again, this is something that is done that we are talking about today in the city of St. Louis, but this transport of detainees is something that is done in every other county in the state. what is our response going to be, and how are we going to feel as a board if we set this aside and we don't move this along? And the 60th person that the sheriff refuses to transmit to the hospital for medical, psychological treatment, whatever, is then injured. And the next court says this is a responsibility of the sheriff. Again, we're talking about transport. Then we're all going to be wringing our hands saying we shoulda, coulda, shoulda done it. To me, the potential failure of taking care of a vulnerable segment of our society, folks that don't have choice, they are reliant upon a timely transfer, says we press forward. And if at the end of the day the sheriff decides to bring a suit, so be it.
We're talking about if he bring a suit of being, if it get dismissed or not. We also are talking about those will be taxpayer dollars, that we can avoid that situation, in my opinion, from happening at this moment. And to say if there's no penalties, it's almost to say, well, really, what is the strength of this bill? I think the chair was trying to throw one at you in support, but at the same time, the opposite thing could be said, well, you're just putting words on paper and there's not going to be any accountability. But as we are talking about this, and we talk about the potential of putting ourselves in litigation, dismissed or not, that still requires additional funds that come from taxpayers. And I think those should be serious conversations. I mean, and we've seen short-term rentals and other things, legislation that we have passed that you cannot stop anybody from suing. And I think in those cases, we thought wholeheartedly that we were doing the right thing. I think with knowing that there is a concern that this does not, it's literally not in the state statute that this is one of the duties, then you can go to another statute that says, well, we can detail more out of what a duty is. I think just puts the city in a very gray area, and it's, there's much more to this bill, but we are getting hung up on this part because I do think it is very gray.
We're getting hung up on this part because if the sheriff doesn't transport a detainee that requires emergent medical treatment, and that detainee passes away or is seriously injured while in the custody of the Division of Corrections, there's going to be a suit against the city of St. Louis.
Devoti, do you foresee an end date? Is there something like, this is the case when a department goes, over budget, or, there's a reason to believe? Is there, or do you envision just moving forward? This is the process for every, sheriff's office, even though this would now be the only office that we have this in place for?
This is the process for this particular office moving forward.
And you don't necessarily have an end date in mind, or would you think like maybe if we have an election and there becomes a new sheriff, we will revisit it?
The way the legislation is written, it doesn't matter if Alfred Montgomery is the sheriff, if James Murphy is the sheriff, if Vernon Betts is the sheriff, if the next guy 10 years down the line is the sheriff. The provision applies equally to any, from date of passage moving forward.
They will put money into their account, which is held by the treasurer's office. But if we never see a purchase order, we don't see it come in, then we don't even know that they have money in those accounts. So what has been happening in this particular office is that when they tried to pay for some things, there was no money in the treasurer's office, so it was sent back for insufficient funds. And then this particular office went ahead and paid with a cashier's check for items. We do not in any way oversee the 5 accounts the sheriff has that they are using right now to pay for items. There isn't this issue that I know of, and I could be wrong, because so far I've had no other county office gone this far over on their budget and also doesn't turn in any receivables. So for the other county offices, we can see the receivables, we can see their budget, but this particular one we cannot. And that's because they have their own accounts and they can actually print their own checks.
My amendment just strikes out all of the transporting information that is in section 1. In the past, it's been agreements, if that's what needs to happen under previous departments, instead of trying to legislate something that I think is one of the things being litigated.
I also want to introduce myself to you. I know some of you well, some of you I've met for the very first time today. I want to tell you who I am. I'm Jami Cox Antwi. I'm the daughter of 2 proud St. Louisans. I come from 4 generations of St. Louis families, and it is this history and my family that's instilled the passion for this city in me. And when I was just a little girl, 14 years old, I acted first on that passion and started my first youth organization. And even though I spent time away from St. Louis in college, I knew I wanted to come home and serve my community